Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that. Just had to reboot. Did that kick anybody off when I had to rejoin?
I don't think
I
so. I've
think
been
we're all
here.
still here.
Okay, great, great.
So, David, I was wondering if you all have access to the credentials for the editable version. It seems you don't have. So I don't know how many people you want to share that user and password, because basically you can create your own things, but you can break some things as well. So I don't know.
Well, I would think for the people who showed up here, I mean that you know, there's an interest in doing that. So I would say with it, let's share it with this group.
Is there a way to restore or to if we do make a change and then we don't, or to go back to a previous version of filter or whatever we change?
Oh, basically, let's say that if you are actually removing things, you need to save things and actually say, yeah, I accept this. So, well, I think it's okay. In any case, we have, well, the dashboard so far only contains standard things. So it's really straightforward to update everything again. So that's not an issue. The point is basically we need some specific naming for when creating your own things. So we are using capital letter C and blah, blah, blah. So if you're not using that specific naming, then you may lose some things when upgrading the system, but that's all.
And is there
Okay.
documentation beyond this meeting for about like best practices for how we should be making those edits and updates?
Yeah. So
Great.
it's something that we will have a look at. Basically, we go through, well, the main goal of this session is to go through the dashboard in the editable version, have a look at at different options that Kibana is providing to understand in a first view what you can do, and then start producing some widgets. So we all play here, and then you understand how this works, and then how you can create your own panels.
Great.
So in terms of question here, if I share the user and password in this chat, is going to be stored, or?
Well, it will be shared publicly. Maybe you can email me, I guess, because I assume we don't want to share it publicly. How about you email me and then or I can forward it to the people on the call. Does that make sense? Or is there a better way to do it maybe?
So user and password, because I'm sorry, but I thought that you already had this. So.
No, I didn't even know that /edit existed.
Okay, then let me copy this. And then, well, once I send the email, please let me know if.
Okay. Did you send it?
Oh, yes.
Okay, let me check just a sec. I haven't got it yet. Okay, there we go.
So please let me know if that.
I got it. Yeah, I'm forwarding it to Scott, Bill, and Zach. I don't think I see anybody else on the call.
Oh, there is a new.
Oh, let me see. Did somebody just join?
Scott, perhaps.
Oh, Andrea.
Yeah. Okay.
Hello, everybody.
Hey, Andrea. I'm just about to forward you a pass. Sorry, we were getting set up. We realized people didn't have access to it. So check your email. There's going to be a username and password coming your way.
I've received one, David.
You did? Great. Great.
Perfect.
So do you want us logging in edit mode during this talk, or we just we have this password so we can edit later if we want to?
Basically, it's up to you. The point is that if you keep doing the same things that I'm doing, then you click there and then you see the information, and then you may have some questions. So we can have a look here.
Are we going to cause conflicts if we're all in at the same time? It's not something that we have to do separately?
No, that shouldn't be an issue.
Right. Could you share your screen though? I mean, even if we on the call are all in the dashboards ourselves, but people will be watching this recording afterwards. Could you please share your screen so people in the recording can see what's going on?
It seems that I need to become a presenter to start sharing my screen, but I don't have the rights, perhaps.
Let me make
so you see the button?
Yeah, I'm making you a presenter.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Did that change things on your end?
Oh, it seems I need to download something.
Oh.
Let me check. It's working. Add extension. Running now. Oh, perfect. It worked. Great. So, do you see my screen now? Basically, the editable version of the ONOS dashboard.
I do. Yes.
Yep.
Okay, great. So we are right now in the editable version of the dashboard for Kibana. So what do we have here? The first view, what we have is basically kind of the same top menu. So we have usual things like the news, save, open serve, and the time frame of activity. So it's something pretty similar what we saw during the last week. And then on the left, we have some new things like the Discover tab, which is basically the tab that you see right now. The Visualize tab, where we will see how to create new visualizations. The Dashboard one, which is the way we build a dashboard. Some potential confusion about the naming. When I mention dashboard, I mean the whole big thing for the ONOS or the core dashboard with all of the panels. While if we talk about dashboard in the naming that Kibana works, we are talking about panels. So basically, each of the panels that we have in the ONOS dashboard, for instance, Git or some other things like Jira, here are named as dashboard. It's just a small detail. Then we have TimeLion. TimeLion is a kind of a external tool for doing things in time series based for Kibana. Then development tools. So basically, you can directly query things to the Elasticsearch. So you can start creating your queries, and then everything gets stored here. And then management. In management, we will see some things about the indexes that we are using that you can see here on the left, and then some formats about the each of the fields. So let's go for the Discover, which is the first thing. What do we have in Discover? Discover is basically the tool that can be used for guessing what's going on in our indexes. So far in this example, for instance, we are in the index Git. But remember, this is kind of a SQL database, but in this case, a NoSQL database whose name is index. What we have for this specific index Git for these 90 days, remember that we have the time frame here, are these 687 hits. What does it mean, a hit? A hit is basically for this specific condition of looking for something, of searching things, we were able to retrieve 687 hits, right? And what are those hits? So those hits are basically all of the things that we have here in the main thing. This is let's say the version in a table, which is all of the fields that are part of this, but we have a JSON document. JSON documents is the basic format that we have, well, that Elasticsearch has to store information. When I meant the last week about having enriched information, I meant that we basically were adding new fields to these JSON documents, to this JSON, or basically to this table. So we keep adding new things here, right? So we have things like the commit name or the author username or the author organization name and so on. So we can keep adding stuff. You can see that basically we have a bunch of information per author, and it happens that the information that we were discussing during the last week with the Git standard panel, those are just a way to visualize all of the information that we have here in this specific index, and specifically in these JSON documents. So I remember that we had information like the authors or the commit, but we don't have information about the committer. Perhaps in ONOS, you have the difference between author and committer, where the author is typically the one sending the patch, while the committer is typically the one reviewing that patch and submitting that into the source code. So depending on the software development process of each community, this could mean different things. And of course, we can produce a specific widgets and panels with just the committer information instead of the author information. So we were having a look during the last meeting to the several indexes that we have. There are some empty indexes. This is still something to improve. But basically, if we go for the specific things that you have, we can go, for instance, for Jira, right? So then you can click on Jira. Then it's charging right now. And then you will see some extra information here. So each of the indexes contains specific information for that specific index. Again, we can filter by here. Instead of the last 90 days, we can go for the last year. In the case of Jira, we would have close to 1,600 hits, right? And instead of having information as the author or the committer, we have information about the assignee. So basically who was assigned to that specific issue, but we have things like the author. You are probably realizing that we have repeated names across the several data sources, like the author name or the author ORG name or the author UID. This means that this is the way we are having the same, let's say, information about developers and organizations across the several data sources. So the better we have this information, the more concise that we will have our metrics in terms of producing things for specific developers or companies. What are those specific fields? Basically, all of the things that are starting with author underscore something, those are common things across the several data sources. So this author UID is the unique identifier we have for that specific author across the several data sources. Of course, there's room for improvement in terms of that we have developers that are perhaps the same member, but we still have those in different identities and affiliation. And remember, we were improving this in the GitLab account where we have this file and then you improve this as a community. Then in terms of Jira, basically we have all of the information that we can retrieve. Well, not all of the information, but most of the information. And this is the enriched version of the index. This means that there is a raw version of this index. And this is part of the third training session where you will see basically how to query this information. So you can access to the raw information, but to the enriched information as well. So if you are not that interested in this specific enriched information, enriched index, you can produce your own index, let's say. So just to present somehow the whole amount of information that you can have a look at. So what kind of things we can do here in the in this discover thing? So basically, you can create searches. What is a search in Elasticsearch? So let me go, for instance, to Git again. If you remember, we were having a look at the specific organizations, and those organizations were part of the field author underscore org underscore name. And for this, I remember that we were looking at Stanford University. We can do this, right? Oh, I misspelled this perhaps again. Okay, perhaps it's just the last 1 year. Let me go for the last 5 years. Yeah, let me check this, for instance. Well, let's go for the Indiana University.
It might not make a difference, but on the first training, we were in the core dashboard, and this one, we're in the ONOS dashboard, so there might be different profiles.
Right. Okay, well, it's okay then. Let's go. That's the reason, because I was not looking for this. Thank you for the pointer. So then I will look for Indiana University. what I'm doing right now is basically to filter all of the information we have by Indiana University. Then basically we can save this specific thing as a new search. So let me look for, I don't know, the last 5 years. So this is all the information we have for Indiana University. And then if we save this, basically what we are doing is to save the search by Indiana University. How should we search? How should we save this? Basically, if we are producing any type of new artifact within Kibana, please use C capital letter underscore, and then the rest of the things that you would like to have this with some meaningful naming, right? Do you have, are you aware of the help that it's available in the panels repository where all of this information is detailed? Maybe not.
Yeah, why don't you show us?
Yeah, if you're not, then so this specific repository in GitHub is part of the toolchain. So let me copy this in the chat. First, you will see basically how things are built here. So we have information about the panels, how they are named, right? How they are exported, because this is a repository with JSON documents, some naming, right? So we have the widgets naming in this case. So what we are doing is basically use some data source and then the specific metrics that this widget is using. And then we have some other things. For instance, for the searches, the things that we are using is this specific naming, which is search, then blah underscore, the field, and the specific search. So in this case, the recommendation, if we follow this, would be, okay, let's go for search. Then we are using the author over the name. And then we are using Indiana University. And then there is the other recommendation. If we go to panels, that basically is saying, if you want, oh, it's not here, it's probably in the contributing section. But basically, if you want to use, if you want to create your own widgets, you should use this C capital letter. So we should use this, right? So then we have a new search. Let me save this. And then we know how to create searches. That's all. This is easy. Basically, this is kind of a way to explore the data and so on. More things with the Discover section. If we are here in the Discover section, we have this big amount of things, right? But there is an option that basically we can visualize any of these searches. And if we are pretty interested in understanding, in building, let's say, a new panel with information about the Indiana University and some other things that we have, perhaps we don't want to have all of these fields that we see in the left. So then a way to proceed would be, okay, I'm interested just in the author date. So I add this field, then the author name, for instance, I add this field. Then I want to understand the number of lines added and the lines removed, and then the message, okay? And that's all. So then you see here on the top left that we have five fields. And then our search is now a bit, let's say, smaller. And then we have like the time, which is basically by default, the time is there. We have the author date that we added here. Well, probably this doesn't make sense, so I will remove this. Then we have the author name, the number of added lines, the number of removed lines, and the message. And then we can save this again. So I'm using the same search because we are interested in understanding how this works, right? So we have created our new search. I don't know if you are playing at the same time with the data, but if you have any question on how to proceed or doing things, please let me know. So this Discover section as a summary is good for explore the data and to create subsets of the data that we have. And with those subsets, then we can create some visualizations on top, right? So let's go to the visualization section. What do we have here? On the left, we have a bunch of, let's say, ways to visualize the data we have in the indexes that we saw before. And then on the right, we have all of the safe visualizations that we have in our dashboard. So if we start in the left. Let's say that we want to have the number of commits over time. So we can click on this vertical chart. And then we have to select one of these indexes on the left. There are indexes, as we can see here. So basically, you are using all of the information that it's available on the data source or in the enriched index, or we can use a saved search. And then it comes this idea of, okay, we can use a specific subset of the information. So we can, in this case, use, for instance, the whole Git repository that we have, or we can use just the information that we filtered using the author.org name, Indiana University. As you can see, there are some others. So basically, we are using some things for the backlog of Jenkins, or looking for some open things, or et cetera, right? So let me use the Git index. And then we have this. So it's important to mention that here on the left, Kibana works in a specific way. So information can be basically aggregated, and this is this metrics thing. And with aggregating information, it means that we are either counting things, or adding things, or calculating the average, or some other stuff. And by buckets, Kibana means basically once you have all of the hits, all of the JSON documents that we have, how do you want to characterize that information, right? And then what we can do is to select basically the x-axis, and then there are ways to characterize that information. So if you want to create something over time, you click on the date histogram, right? By default, the author that is being used by Kibana is the by default date, and we can see how this works later in the management section. But by default, it's creation date, right? So this is part of these common fields that we have defined. Indeed, if remember in the specific information in the README in the panels, we go there, we have some common index fields, and we have all of this information that it's common, or at least should be common across the several data sources. One of those is the grimoire creation date. So we are using the same specific date, grimoire creation date, for each of the indexes. So let's go back to how to create this. So basically, we are creating a date histogram. We select this specific date. We can select the interval. So in this case, we can say, okay, select this by instead of ourselves defining this. It's good basically to have this auto if you are later playing with the data. Because if you have, for instance, 5 years, you will see the information displayed on monthly basis. But if you go for the last week, probably you will have information by hour or per day, right? So that depends. And then you can use specific custom labels. So let's go for, if we are counting things, in Git, we are counting basically commits. So we have a number of commits here. And if you are over time, so basically what we have is time. So then we have to click here on the play. Okay, so what do we have now? We have the evolution of the ONOS activity, all of the activity that we have. So we are counting bots, we are counting merge commits, and so on for the last 5 years. And that's all. Okay, so this is our first widget. We have created a widget for counting commits. And then, of course, we can save this, right? So we can do things like, okay, C capital letter underscore, and then we see testing ONOS commits, for instance, right? And then we save this. Perfect. Of course, if we have these metrics and buckets, we can keep adding things here, right? So we can add a new sub bucket. So let me click here in the sub buckets, and then I split bars. Basically, what I'm doing is to say, hey, this information is great, but I would like to see this by, let's say, author org name, that remember is the organization name. And then you can select the metric that you want this to be displayed. So in this case, we are using the number of commits. That is basically the metric that we define here on top. And you can select the order. And instead of having the last for the 5 first companies, we can go for the first 10. Then we can say here, okay, these are my organizations. And then we play again. So what do we have? What we have is basically for each time frame for each slot, we have the top 10 organizations participating. And this is a bit obscure, probably, because probably you have expected to have not all of this amount of companies, but just the 10 first of those. And this is because we are using this difference here in the bucketing action. Because we defined in first place the histogram, we are telling Kibana, hey, in first place, characterize my information by the date, and then for each date, bucketize that information by the top 10 companies. So if you want to have the other way around, which is basically the top 10 instead of the buckets, then we have to move this to the top, and then we will have the top 10 companies. So first, what we have is basically, okay, let's choose the first top 10, and then for those top 10, please have me the commits over time. Be aware, in any case, that we are missing commits in both cases, right? Because what we are doing is just to split the data for the first 10 organizations. If we have some more organizations, we are missing the rest of the information. So this basically explains why this shape of the commits is a bit different from the commit shape that you have. But the big point here is that basically you can see this information over time, right? For the organizations that we have. So more things that we have in a widget in Kibana. Basically, you can keep adding metrics. So on top of having this number of commits, we can do things like, let's say, count number of authors, unique number of authors. And remember that we have the number of authors by the author UID, right? Then we have this. It's a bit tricky because we have many things here. So probably a good approach would be just to have one of these aggregations and then bucketize information as much as you want, right? Instead of this, perhaps we could have, we could have this. So then what I'm doing right now is, instead of counting commits, I'm counting unique number of authors. And then I have for the top 10 organizations giving more authors to the project, how they are evolving, right? So this is another different, let's say, chart, right? So I'm adding here the number of authors. So then we would have the number of authors over time for the top 10 organizations that we have here, right? I don't know, have you played with this or do you have any question? No questions so far? Do you hear me? It's all right?
Yeah, I hear you just fine. Yeah,
I hear you.
Perfect.
Yeah, people, please,
Okay.
if people have questions, please ask.
Yeah, and interrupt me or write those in the chat, so feel free. Please play with the data because it's sometimes you discover things about the project quite interesting. So we have, as we are counting, as the name is commits here. So what I'm doing basically is to have this again, counting commits. So then we have this bucketing here. I'm saving this again. And then what I'm doing is, instead of having this bar here, like the author origin name, I'm removing this, I'm playing this, so I just have the number of commits. And then let's say, oh, this is the number of commits. Okay, let me go for the other bucket so I can create the proper chart for organizations, because I already have the commits one. So author origin name, and then we have the top 10, and then we have orgs here, right? Okay, and then we are moving this to the top. Oh, not yet. Okay, it's there. Okay, so then I'm saving this again, and then we have commits organization, right? For instance, we can use this naming. Perfect. More things here. We have options. Each of the charts has its own option. For instance, you can have this stacked thing for the bars, but you can have the percentage. but in some cases are probably more meaningful, or at least you can visualize the same information in a different way. So for instance, we have here that during 2014, big switch networks was quite important for the community, but they tend to disappear. And at some point we have these Fujitsu people participating again in ONOS, but well, it seems that nowadays they are not that much. And then we have this other Siena that seems to be in the project since 2014. And then, of course, people from the very foundation. So there are with the same specific chart, basically you can display information in different ways, and then you can group the information. So basically, we would have 10 specific lines. So one for each time frame and for each company. So this is not that meaningful right now. So we can have this as a percentage, let's say. So I will use this, for instance. I like this. Yeah, I want to overwrite this. Okay, perfect. So more charts that we have. So remember that I've already produced a couple of visualizations, right? So remember that we have the commits, and then we have the commits per organization, again, in both cases with a vertical bar. And remember that we created a new one for the Discover section using a specific search. So there are some others. Another one quite useful is the table. So the idea is that you produce similar thing, but instead of having information by in a chart, so let's say visually detailed, what we have is a table. In this case, we can produce similar things. So let's say that we want to go for the specific term, the author name, because we are interested in understanding the top authors. And as we are counting commits, basically what we have here is these authors by the number of commits. So I'm adding here number of commits to have some proper labels. And then we have the author. And then we play here, right? And as we have some other metrics, we can go for, okay, I'm interested in understanding, whoops, not the percentiles, but the unique count of, let's say, repositories. So we can go for the repo name, and then we can see, okay, I want for these developers the number of repositories, and then we play again. Okay, what happened here? Okay, I want to order this by commit. So then we have for these developers, the number of commits, the number of repositories. And then just to understand how productive they are, well, let me use definition of productivity here as the number of added or removed lines, right? Let's use the median number of added lines. So we can say this. Something wrong. Oh, okay. So then we would have information as, okay, this developer, Yuta Higuchi, is actually, well, for the last 5 years, remember, he's typically having 9 added lines, right? So, okay, it's 50%. So if we say this, that works. So, and then we have some others that are doing basically as Simon Hand, he's doing basically bigger commits. So we can understand, we can have all of this information. In the same way that we have the added lines, we can go for the removed lines. But instead of having, I don't know, the median, I want to have all of the added lines by a developer. And I'm simply adding things here. So let's say, adding things to the table. So we have per developer, the number of commits, number of repositories where they have been working on, typical commit size, and then the total number of added lines. And then we have that information for the top 50, or we can have information for the top 200. Then we basically have a bigger table here. Remember that you can export information clicking here on the raw or formatted data. So basically, if you click there, what you get is a CSV file that you can use later. So I'm saving this again. And in this case, I'm doing zip _testing _ONOS underscore main authors, for instance. And then we save. Okay. And then we just created a new visualization. So let's click again on visualize. What other things do we have here? Area chart. So basically it's the typical line chart, but with areas. Data table is the one that we produce. The line chart is basically to create line charts. Markdown widget, you can create your own things here in terms of creating some text. So we can come here and say, okay, we can say git activity. If we play, what this basically is git activity, but instead of using a second level, so you can go for a third. Oh, sorry. Then this is smaller, right? So let's use this as example, and then we save this again. So we can say testing activity label, right? We have some meaningful naming there. It's a good recommendation to have some specific naming. So I recommend you to go through this way of creating things, because then everyone will be aware of that specific widget is doing, right? Then, well, we have some metrics. This is basically a way to display big numbers. So just imagine that you want to have the total number of commits or the total number of authors in a big name, because, well, it's good to understand the total number of people that are participating as member. So you can click there, and then you will have basically this big name here, right? So it's not a big deal. Pie charts, as the usual pie charts. The tag cloud is quite interesting because basically you can create tags based on specific terms. So let's say that we want to go for the message here. So, okay, let me look for the, so we have two messages, but I don't remember where the other one is. We should have basically two messages. One of the messages is for to have all of the message as a keyword. So basically we can work with that text. The other one is used for this specific tag cloud where you can visualize in a quick view where the most important words are used, or there are some specific, for instance, tags in Stack Overflow or some labels that the people used in some projects. So it's useful for that things. Well, in example right now, it's not that useful, but well, at least you're aware of this. Time series, basically you can build your own time series. It has its own expression language, as you can see here. And it's quite interesting if you want to combine basically two different indexes. One of the main limitations of Kibana right now is that in each of these widgets, you can only use information coming from just one index. Remember that we have an index for Git, an index for Jira, an index for Confluence. But the point is that you can use just one index. In the case of the time series, if you want to compare, for instance, activity in Git and in Jira, this could be done there. There are other ways that you can we will see it probably in the third session, that is basically you can create an alias. What's an alias? Basically, an alias is like doing a cut of each of the indexes. So you have everything grouped in the same index, and then you can keep adding things. And instead of having everything split by each of the data sources, what we would have is everything in one index, and then you can go there and play with the data. That's also my recommendation is that you have a look at the time series and timeline. But there's 15 minutes left, so let's create our new dashboard. So we have again the same information as we had before, right? So new, add, save, open, share, and options. So if we click on new, basically what we have is we want to create a new dashboard. If we click on add, what we are doing is we want to add widgets or saved search. Remember that we have this Indiana University, so we can click here, and then we see how things appear there. Then we go to visualizations, look for capital letter, blah, blah, blah. So we can click here and here and here and here. And then we have the several widgets that we created. So let me do something like this. And then basically you can drop and click things, right? So we can do this. So then we have some front on the top. You can change the name of this. We can do things like this. Okay. So we are updating the title. And then, okay, we are interested in the commits here. So we can have this bigger, right? And then we can have this for comparison. We can have this at the bottom. Then we can have this. Okay, and then we can move this there, and we can move this there. Okay, let me have this a bit smaller, perhaps. Okay, you can see now the limitations here. We have the Git activity, and then we can order this a bit more, like having the Indiana University activity, because we are interested in that for some reason, and then we click there. So this is the way basically we build dashboards, and this is the way you can create your own dashboard. So remember that we can click here and say, okay, this is we can update the name, so we can say Indiana University developers, for instance, and then we save this. Then we say in ONOS, and we save this, and then we have the main authors, so we can do something like top 200 authors. And we save this. And then we can save this dashboard. We can say testing training, for instance. Important to notice that we have this option here, store time with dashboard. This basically means that we can have different time frames of activity depending on the dashboard that you are using. So instead, in this case, we have the last 5 years. By default, you see that in ONOS Core that we have the last 90 days, that we feel that it's meaningful, but you can have other things. So let's go, for instance, for the last 6 months. Okay, for Indiana, we don't have information. Well, let's keep it in the last 5 years. So we have at least Indiana people here. So then we save. And then I want to store this with timing. And then we save. And then this is all. So we have basically saved our first dashboard. Of course, you can play with other dashboards. So we have some things. As you can see, these are all of the dashboards that we have for specifically for ONOS. So you can go for Jira, you can go for Jenkins, Git demographics, some information about Gerrit, the Confluence, and so on. And then we have here our dashboard. So let's have a look at the Git. We click here, now it's charging. We have all of the information basically that we had a look the other day. Well, the other day for Core, not for ONOS. But it's good at the starting point because basically, okay, I'm not sure how this widget is built, this organization thing. So, okay, I want to check this. So I can click here on the editable version. Then it's loading. And it's specifically loading that pie chart. So then you know, okay, these people are building this organizations thing by counting a unique count of hash. Why are we counting unique hashes? Because basically you can have forks of the project. So basically we would be double or triple counting some commits. So in order to avoid this, basically we are counting unique hashes. And then we have these slices, and then basically we are doing this author org name, right? So it's good, let's say, for understanding how the things are done, right? Yep. So we can have a look at others. Let's say this Jira timing. And of course, if you don't like something about this, basically you can start moving things. So what I meant before about not having, hey, come back. Okay, now it's doing something wrong. Okay, there. What I meant before saying that you may break things is basically because you have to actively click on that save button, right? So that's all. But it's, let's say, hard to break things because you need to click there and say, yeah, I want to save this, right? But the good point about this is that maybe you want to have this here and you want to have this there and blah, blah, blah. And then you can share this. Remember that we have this share button. This is quite cool if you want basically to share this specific dashboard with the filters and widgets that you produced with third-party people. And then you sort the URL and then you share this URL here. So if I give you this URL here in the chat, you will see just the same thing that I'm seeing right now. Okay. Yeah, and this is how basically we are producing dashboards. Then in terms of the dev tools, this is interesting basically to check, to play with information. This is more a task for the third training session where you will see all of these JSON documents and activity and blah, blah. But this is all how this works. And then the management. In the management section, what we have are the first, all of the index patterns. This is the place where if you want to add a new index that perhaps was built by any in the community or something else, or someone else, basically, this is the place. So if you see, and we go, for instance, for Git, then we are asked if we want to have this specific, let's say, the date that we want to use by default. Remember that we are using by default usually the Grimoire creation date. So if we click here, basically what we are doing is, okay, I want to create, I want to import a new index that it's stored in Elasticsearch because this specific screen is working directly with Elasticsearch. So it's asking question to Elasticsearch. And then I want you to use this specific time field here. So, but we can use things like the commit date or the author date or some other things, right? So each of these specific fields has a specific meaning. And then you create things. So if I click here, basically what we have is a new index. But as we already have Git, that's okay. If an index has a star, as we have here in the Git thing, it means that this is the index by default. So if you are either running queries in the DevTools or you are going to the Discover tab, you will use this Git thing here, right? More things, save objects. These are all of the artifacts that we have in the dashboard. So we have 18 dashboards so far, basically 17 plus the one that I just created. The number of searches. So these are all of the searches that you have in the dashboard, and all of the visualizations that are in somehow the metrics that we are displaying. If you want, let's say that you are interested in exporting a specific dashboard, so this is the place that you can do this. So if you click here, you put export everything, and then you can import information, right? So for instance, let's imagine that you want to export Gerrit. So you can export Gerrit, and then if you click there, you will get a JSON file. That JSON file contains information about how Gerrit is built, but then you need to go to the searches. So then you need to look for the searches specifically for Gerrit, and then for the visualizations that, if you remember, we are using this naming. So basically you need to select all of the visualizations that are starting with the keyword Gerrit, right? And then you can export everything. We have a tool for this. So it's Tidash. It's in utils. Okay, it's here. So this tool is already under a pip packages. What you have here, if you have a look at the information as an example, what you can do is to export everything all together at the same time. So you don't need to go through the Kibana interface. So this is basically faster, just in case you are interested. So I'm giving you this pointer. So this is another place where you can basically break things. So we have this delete button here. Yep, and then you can either view the visualization or you can edit the visualization. This is another place where you can break things, where basically in this editable version, what you are doing is you are accessing how the visualization is stored, how this works in terms of the query to Elasticsearch and the information that you have, and blah, 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 right? So, well, this is interesting if you are curious, but that's all. And then advanced settings, that it's again the same. So basically you are defining things here. Okay, so one of the last things for the last 5 minutes, it's quite interesting here in these indexes, we have a bunch of fields, as you can see. We can order those fields and so on. So I'm going for the grimoire creation date, which is this field. You can see that we have here kind of a clock. This means that this is by default the selection of the date. And then if you go to the right, you will see that there is an edit button. So the things that you can do is basically you can define the pattern, right? So you can see that we have here, we have already defined that pattern. So in this case, with this format, what we are using is this deck, blah, 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 blah. But if we add a new M, because we like this better, so you can do this, right? So instead of having deck, you can have December. Instead of having Jan, you can have January. Or maybe you can go for the time at the level of hours, minutes, seconds, or milliseconds, right? So depending on the things that you want to visualize, it makes sense one thing or the other. And this is all. So in summary, we have had a look about how we can explore the data and create subsets of the data for creating new visualizations in the Discover tab. We have learned how to visualize things in this Visualize tab. Then we know how to create new dashboards, as we can see here, with a new button or addition. Basically, we know how to import and export things and build and play with the indexes that we already have imported. And this is all about the second session. I don't know if you have questions or, yeah.
I thought this was really useful. Thank you. I don't have a question right now, but I'm curious if other people do.
Mm-hmm.
No questions here, but I appreciate you going through the training. This is very good.
Oh, thank you. So please feel free to play with the dashboard, and if you have any question or you are not sure about how to proceed, let us know, and then we will drive you again about the problem.
I guess I did have one question, Daniel. We're looking at the ONOS dashboard, and you had sent a account for that. What is the login for the Cord version of this?
Should be the same.
The same. Okay, the same. Great.
Yeah. So basically, we go for this. Well, can you try this? I don't remember the password right now.
Yeah, I'll try it. So, and if it's not the same, I'll let you know and ask. But it should be
okay, perfect. Yeah, should be the same.
Okay, great.
Regarding to tomorrow's training, I'm afraid I cannot do it. I'm really sorry.
Okay, no, you and I can. Okay, let's talk offline, and we'll pick a different time, and I can update the invitation information.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, I'll follow up with you right after this.
Okay, perfect. Well, so thank you very much for your time.
All right, thank you, Daniel.
Okay, have a great day.
You too. Thanks. Bye.
You too.
Bye.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks. This is very, very informative. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.